Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the newest episode of Retro Nerds Rewind podcast. This is our third official one here that we're going to be uploading. Today's episode is a special one. It is Cody's episode. So, first thing I want to do is go through each of our podcasters here. So let's introduce ourselves here for a second. I'm going to throw it first to the guy of the hour, Cody.
Hi, everyone. Obviously, my name is Cody. Really quick, just have to say that Sailor Moon, since spoiler, today's episode is about Sailor Moon. The version that I watched, and that is the one that I remember the most, is the Deke version from 1995 to 1998. The one that we're going to talk about today is the later revised version from 2014 by Viz. And we'll get into that later on, but just wanted to kind of give some insight onto there are differences. It is my absolute favorite show, if you could not tell with my figures in the background for the past couple of episodes, or not. But it is a big, huge part of my life. I even told the main voice actress that played Sailor Moon when she came to Phoenix Fan Fusion that Sailor Moon was a big inspiration to why I wanted to dance as well, and to this day it still is big, huge inspiration to dance. And yeah.
All right. Next, we've got Jamal, or JT.
So I really don't have much to say about Sailor Moon. I'm obligated, if you will, since I'm married into Sailor Moon. So I won't speak bad about it. I will say I noticed like some animated similarities between that and Dragon Ball. It's like kind of the same style since I think they're around the same time. I did pick up that her uniform is a school uniform, so that makes sense because she's 14. So that's pretty much what I got right now. And then you can say the villains sort of, I could see why Power Ranger fans relate because it's like kind of similar. And they're like, they're goal orientated. So there are monsters and villains and things of that nature.
All right. Next up, Sean.
That's me. This is actually my first time watching Sailor Moon, but it's not the first time it's played in my household. As I started to watch the episode for this rewatch, my daughter came downstairs and asked why I was watching Sailor Moon, and I told them, we were doing it for the rewatch. So for this rewind podcast, this is actually my first time watching it. So I've got fresh eyes for everything.
Wonderful. My name is Aaron. I am the host of the episode today. I did watch a little bit of Sailor Moon growing up. It did come out in 1994 for the dub originally. And I remember watching a little bit of it. And then as soon as I watched the episode today, I realized why I didn't watch it after that. So I was not the demographic for that. We'll talk a little bit later as we get into it, the reasons as to why I would have stopped after just a couple episodes, because I never just gave up on a show after one. I always gave it like 3 or 4 episodes to try and see. Sometimes the first episode on things they don't quite hook you. It takes a couple of them for them to really get their claws in to start telling good story. But this one unfortunately never was able to sink it in for me. So. But that doesn't mean it's not for everybody else. I mean, Cody absolutely loves this show, and I've seen enough of it to know kind of why, and I know him well enough to know why. So it's all good. If every show has their demographics somewhere along the way, doesn't make it bad, just makes it different. So All right. Next thing we want to go through is a little bit of announcements here. We want to go through first our few sponsors that we have. First one up is Peoria Championship Martial Arts. I personally go there. Same thing with my daughter and my son. We've been going there since before COVID. They treated us very well, especially even during COVID. They were very safe about it. Brought us into the modern era where we were actually doing it virtually, and then as restrictions were being changed, we were allowed back in there. Small amounts kept people separated out, and still to this day they have distance in between everybody to help alleviate anyone's concerns about that. Still, right now the special we've got going on for our listeners is 4 weeks for $49, includes your gi and the initial free trial session. They go in there, you get to sit in there with Mr. Munding, the owner of the school and lead instructor. He'll have a one-on-one session with you or your child, then take you inside, and you'll actually get to break a board on your very first day. Teaches you exactly how to do that. So go on in there, give them a shout out. They're off of 91st Avenue in Peoria. Their website is simply martialartspeoria.com. Now let's head over to Sean about our other sponsor.
Thanks, Aaron. Hey, you like me? Do you like RPGs and board games? Well, if so, Crit Hit 6 Spicy Weather is coming up, and I believe that's the convention for you. July 6th and 7th at Doubletree by Hilton in Phoenix Mesa. We're going to be there on July 6th, so come see us as we record panels of this podcast, as well as talking about Power Rangers and gaming. Full weekend badges are still available at crithitaz.com. And I believe we're going to put the website in the description for the video. Yeah, back to you, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Sean. Our last sponsor of this episode is Drawn to Comics in Glendale, Arizona. Yes, Drawn to Comics, where myself and Sean both personally have boxes there. The owner, Ken, is constantly there on the floor talking, getting to know his customers. Their biggest, their biggest benefit there is not their discounts, not their deals, which they always have plenty of. It's the customer service. Every employee there wants you to know they're there for you. They're there to answer questions, and they're more than happy to get to know you. Even if you're not going to buy anything, you want to hang out at the counter and chit chat with the people that are behind the counter for a little while, they're more than happy to do it. So give them a check. Again, they're off of 59th Avenue and Glendale in downtown Glendale. Their website is drawntocomics.com. And for the listeners that get to the very end of this podcast, we have a special deal that we will announce then. All right. So let's move on and let's find out a little bit about the history of the dubs. Take it away, Cody.
Yes. So before we get started, I wanted to kind of do a small history lesson on this show because the show has gone through quite a lot. The creator of this, Naoko Takeuchi, originally started writing this manga in 1992 and finished the whole novel in 1997 in Japan. During that, though, the rights of that coming to America, there was a big, huge battle. The first publisher that bought the rights, however, is a very common person that we all know, Saban. Saban originally was going to produce a half live action, half cartoon version of Sailor Moon. Yes, I said that correctly. Half live action, half cartoon, before Power Rangers was even a thing. So Sailor Moon, Saban Sailor Moon is a huge thing. There's actually a really good YouTuber. I have to get her name later on, but she actually did a fantastic job going through finding archived materials from it, including a full intro scene, a full pilot episode. It's all out there on YouTube. If you're ever interested, definitely go check it out. But eventually that fell through, unfortunately, and Deke did buy the rights 1995.
That's how you pronounce it. Deke. Oh, okay.
Deke.
We've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Yes, Deke. Which was originally brought to W Kids. So Deke, unfortunately, their dub was very censored. It was made for an American audience. So a lot of the Japanese names were taken out. A lot of the Japanese culture was taken out of the show in order to make it more familiar with an American audience. Hence why the creator is a little upset over this version, and is actually a major reason why she's hesitant about taking sponsors from other companies to try and make other products and stuff like that for Sailor Moon. So ever since this particular dub, it ruined it so much for her that she basically has like 1 or 2 collaborations every 10 years or so, if that.
Wow.
But eventually, from 95 to 96 is when Deke showed the show on WB Kids. 98 is when Cartoon Network actually took it, and this is where I started watching it. And Toonami, on their Action Hour, is when they started showcasing this show. So yes, it was the Deke version still. So all the names were Americanized. A lot of the censorship behind it. So, spoiler alert, Neptune and Uranus are not lesbian lovers. They are cousins in this version, which is a huge controversial topic. But eventually in 2002 is when they stopped, and Toonami is actually the only one that showed what's known as the lost episodes, which the lost episodes are the most graphic
Ooh.
to Deke. So it wasn't until 2014, because a lot of fight happened between Toei and the Japanese commercial licensing in America. They saw what Deke did. There's a lot to it than just that, but essentially Viz bought the rights to Sailor Moon again. They completely redubbed it with a new voice cast, including someone who is also very familiar to us Power Ranger fans, Johnny Young Bosch,
Yep.
who played Tuxedo Mask, as well as Salem the cat. But 2014 is till 2018, I think it was, is when they completely showcased the show in its original form. They took the Japanese show and just dubbed it as if it was original licensing. And obviously, because this is the later 2000s, early 2010s, anime is a bigger thing, hence why we have more appreciation for anime.
Right.
So now that is the version we have now today. So, with 2 versions, the version that we have, I'll go ahead and kind of start us off to our rewind and our recap.
Well, I've got one more question before we get started on that.
Oh, of course.
Which version do you hold most dear to your heart?
To my heart, I hold them both dearly for different reasons, but the Deke version is the one that I saw by myself as well as with my cousins, pretended to spin around and transform my whole life, because obviously that was the whole thing about Sailor Moon, was becoming cool Sailor Guardians and spinning around in circles. So yeah, the Deke version I hold near and dear to me, but the Viz version, for the authenticity of bringing the actual Japanese show to an English audience and getting what the Japanese audience saw from this show, is what brought me into reading the actual manga later on too.
Okay. Yeah, I will say I watched both versions to prep for this podcast. It wasn't required, so I don't know if anybody else did or not. We just agreed to watch the Hulu one because it's the easy access one. I know how to deep dive in ways we don't need to go into for the internet, but you can find it still streaming out there. Just not in the nicest of places. You've got to have some good protection on your computer, or it's going to get pregnant by something you don't want. But I could definitely, there was a lot of differences. I could see why the Deke version was so popular. And there were some things about it that I really liked that I would have liked to have made it over into the Viz version. And we'll get there, and I'll talk about that as we go through the episode. But I do like how the Viz version is so true, and you could really tell that it is like basically original anime. So it was, I can see why that both have their fan bases, but I can see why people really like that Viz version. So, all right, everybody, let's sit back and hit rewind. Cody, go ahead and start us off.
All right, so we start our show with the original Moonlight Desu song, the intro. So we actually get the Japanese introduction. We do a whole slideshow of Japanese culture, and you definitely get a feel of this is a very pretty and elegant show. It actually shows a lot of really major architectural structures of Tokyo too. So hence why this is a huge version. Major difference of the Deke version, Deke had its own original, did not show as much as of the culture, but again, it had a whole American soundtrack. I'll go into that a little bit later too.
Now the song it's almost the exact same song.
Yes.
Did they translate the song, or is it
No,
both completely different? Because it didn't have the subtitles of the music like it normally does on a lot of these animes.
So Moonlight Desu has its own theming to it. It actually matches the show. If you actually look up the lyrics for the show, it goes into what Sailor Moon actually represents, kind of telling what Princess Naoko wanted for her books in the whole thing. The Deke version, the intro of the song, it's just an American song. It was lyrics written by Andy Hayward, arranged by Bob Summers from the Don Perry music, and sung by Nicole and Bryn Price at the age of 14 and 11.
Wow.
So they actually beat out a unnamed adult female singer, and they beat out the actual adult singer to sing this song. Now, it is the same tune.
Right.
It has the same back tune, but they arranged it to be different enough to where it is its own thing now. But
the American version is awesome. Yes. I will say it's a really cool song.
It's up there with the classic 90s themes, I would say. If you put it in like a 90s theme song playlist, this would definitely be on there as well. But we'll continue on after the theme song. We open with the title card and Usagi asleep in her bed. She's talking about herself, describing herself as being a little bit of a klutz and being made fun of and teased because she's a little bit of a crybaby. She doesn't know who she truly is yet. She's only 14 years old, and she's passed out asleep, and her alarm wakes up, and she freaks out because she knows that she's absolutely late for school. She runs downstairs outside. She's about to rush out, asking her mom, "Why didn't you wake me up?" Mom said, "I told you I did. You told me not to bother you multiple times." And she's about to run out the door, and her mom reminds her to, "You forgot your lunch." She comes back, grabs her lunch, and she leaves. We then pan to her running to school, and she stops at a car park where these little kids are beating up this little teeny tiny kitty cat. Usagi, being the kind-hearted girl that she is, she shoos them away to save the little kitty cat, and she notices on the cat that there's bandages on her forehead. So when she removes the bandages, she takes it off and she goes, "Oh my, a bald spot. There's a crescent moon right in the top of this black cat's head."
Yeah, that was kind of an awkward change too there. Like,
so obviously the cat now being saved, you notice when she peels the bandage off, something in the cat's eyes flashes of realization, and it jumps on top of a car and stares her down. And she's just freaking out, kind of like really nervous, wondering what this cat's going to do. And not even 20 seconds later, the bell for her school is ringing in the background. She freaks out and she runs away. We pan to her classroom outside the school. Her teacher's yelling at her for being late again, and she's locked out of her class. So now she is just standing out there by herself, and her stomach is grumbling. She tells herself, "Well, since I skipped breakfast, I guess I'll just eat my lunch now." And her teacher comes out screaming at her, "This is why you are doing bad in school. This is why you fail." And she shows her test that she made a 30% on.
but the teacher says 3%. I thought that was like, I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Come on here. Let's get this dub right, guys. Come on.
So obviously she's upset about that. She failed her test. She's so sad. And her friend Naru is trying to cheer her up by telling her, "I can't believe that you're so dumb that you would do this. You said that you studied." Obviously Usagi is just trying to say, "You're supposed to be my best friend. What are you doing here?" And it's not until the nerdy kid walks up and says, "Hey guys, I got a 95 and I didn't even need to study that much."
That's pretty good there, buddy.
Put the swirls on your glasses to look a little confused, like when you're talking to girls, because it's
Yes, he has the
that's your 90s trope
swirls on the
right
eyes,
there.
which is my question, because I don't watch a lot of anime, and I know that in anime there's like different things that they put on to represent different emotions and expressions and things like that, like a sweat drop or whatever. And the swirly eyes, those were glasses he was wearing, because I thought that was just his eyes.
We have
And
to
I wasn't sure what the swirly represented.
Confusion.
The Coke bottle glasses. We're thinking like his eyes are supposed to be so big that it just blocks him out. But it also is to kind of showcase that he's just a secondary character. He's the nerdy kid. We're not supposed to really pay that much
I was taking it as he liked her too.
I guess in a sense. I mean, he's just the nerdy kid in school. He just wants to fit in with everyone, but he's just very studious.
One of the big anime tropes was confusion when talking to girls in certain age groups.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys would have, when they would talk to them, would have those spirals on it because they didn't know what they were doing. So kind of like almost like the bloody nose when they would get, when they'd be like,
when you see something,
you know, it was the supposed to be the opposite of that on there. So it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna. So
well, this is also a kind of a little bit of a representation of the author's school life too. So a lot of the characters that she styled after, obviously Usagi is herself. She actually wore her hair just like that with the 2 buns and the pigtails and everything. But right down to her uniform is styled after the uniform she wore, as well as a lot of the major students that we meet are someone that she's met throughout her life too. So I thought that was very interesting as well.
One of the things I noticed I wanted to bring up here between the 2 different versions was that her friend had a very common accent in the Viz version. In the Deke version, she sounded like she was from Boston and even said it was wicked good. Some wicked good. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, and Usagi's name is not Usagi because, again, since we're talking about an American audience for kids, her name is Serena.
Right.
So we have Serena and Molly.
Yep.
And not Usagi and
Molly
Naru.
from Boston.
Molly from Boston.
Yeah.
So after the nerdy kid kind of just flaunts that he only got a 95 without even studying, Naru says, "You're being so cruel. You're being so cruel. Can't you see she's suffering because of her failure? Not like that she failed any less than she already does. But either way, you're not helping." And Naru starts to talk about, instead to change the subject, she starts to talk about a mysterious vigilante by the name of Sailor V. So she starts talking about how Sailor V saved or stopped burglars at a jewelry store and that she's so elegant. The nerdy guy starts talking more about how she works for the Secret Service and she's supposed to be a secret agent and helping Tokyo and stuff like that. And the only thing that Usagi worries about is the fact that she went to a jewelry store and that she's so elegant. Because as soon as they stop talking about Sailor V, both Naru and Sailor Moon, or I'm so sorry, Usagi, start talking about going to a jewelry store because Naru's mom owns a jewelry store. And everything's on sale.
Her mom went insane. Is all I've got to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, even between them, there's big differences. But when you walk in and the first thing she says in the Deke dub is like, everything in the store is 90% off. I'm like, that should be a big red flag for her daughter. I'm sorry. She owns a jewelry store. She ain't selling 90% off.
She doesn't know business yet.
Still, she can realize insanity when she sees it.
Before they go to the jewelry store, I had a question. Because the nerdy kid with the confusion glasses, like as the girls are geeking out about jewelry and they love this and that and the other, and he gets this weird expression on his face that I wasn't able to pick up or recognize what emotion they were trying to relate. Like, does he have a crush on these girls? Is he just exasperated because they're talking about jewelry?
I think it's a mixture of these girls are just talking about jewelry and I brought up these interesting facts, as well as wanting to fit in because he's the nerdy kid. And later on episodes, there is an actual episode that stars him and goes into a little bit of his background. But for now, we just know that he just wants to fit in with these two girls who he calls his friends, and they don't really see him as like a major friend. He's just the nerdy kid that's trying to brag that he's super smart.
And I know in the Deek Dub, I remember in the Deek Dub, he actually invited Serena Usagi in to go to the library to study,
yeah.
to help her study. And her, Molly was like, yeah, no, we're not going to study. We're going to go shopping. So,
yeah. She doesn't need to be study. She just needs a shopping spree in a Boston accent.
Yep. Wicked deals. Wicked good.
Wicked good deals.
Khakis. Khakis.
But before we get to the jewelry store, we pan to our first look at our antagonist, one of our major antagonists of the beginning of this whole series.
Rita Repulsa. Oh, wait,
yes. Sorry. Queen Beryl, also known as Rita Repulsa. And she is twisting her crystal ball and talking to the spirits of the dead. And she mentions specifically that she needs to gather the silver crystal energy for the High Empress. We don't know who the High Empress is. We've never seen who she's talking about. But she does specify that she needs this silver crystal energy. But for now, she is going to she's going to steal the energy from Earthlings. For now. Which we know that Earthling energy isn't as good as silver crystal energy, obviously. So she summoned, or one of her knights in shining armor, Jadeite, comes forward and mentions that he has already sent one of his demons to start going ahead to steal the energy of these Earthlings. Now, what we will learn later on is that there are multiple knights, but they are all named after different types of crystal. There is a very big purpose behind it later on, but we'll put it in the back of our mind as you go through the series. But just know that there are multiple crystal named knights. Well, we then pan to the actual jewelry store, and we see this silhouette of this lady with red hair talking about that she is here to steal the energy of all these greedy Earthlings, and that all these ladies are wearing rings and earrings and necklaces, and they all start to glow, and you can see it suck in like a vacuum into this giant green crystal. And it's not until Naru walks in and says, Mom, I brought my friend with me. And she turns from this very evil lady to, Hi! It's so good to see you! Oh my gosh! It's so nice to meet you, Sagi. And because you are my daughter's friend, I'm going to give you an extra discount.
Yeah.
So she takes her to the counter. She shows her this diamond ring that she is selling for 500,000 yen.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll give it to her for 30,000 yen. Which they say, holy cow, that's such a big discount. Which there is a huge crowd around them. All of them go, oh my god, that's such a good deal. We're going to steal that first. Completely dogpile on top of the two girls. And Usagi has to crawl from underneath this crowd. And obviously, since she can't afford any of this, she decides to leave.
Did anyone else do the math of how much that translates to American dollars?
I haven't.
It's let's see, 30,000 yen. We're talking what? Right around $30 right now.
right
So,
now. Okay,
yeah.
so I did the math. I looked it up to today's yen to US dollars conversion. 500,000 yen is $3,133.
Okay.
30,000 yen is $188.
That's a huge discount.
It's a
That's a
huge
big
discount.
discount.
Now, I want you to also think about this then. In the Deke dub, it's supposed to be a 20 carat diamond that she'll give it to her for $10.
$10.
Oh, wow.
$10.
I'm like, she could have afforded that, you know?
Yeah.
That was the huge thing. That, and in the Deke version, they Molly and Serena talk about how they want gemstones, and her mom
Rhinestone.
says rhinestones. Oh, no, you don't want rhinestones, you want diamonds, darling. And that's when she shows the diamond ring. And we're supposed to assume that everyone else in the store is getting diamonds, because that's what's on sale in this jewelry store during the Deke version. This one, obviously, it's everything on sale. But Usagi decides to leave. She's outside the store. She's upset over the fact that she has failed her test, and she gets all frustrated and crumples it and tosses it behind her, which it lands on the head of this very macho man in sunglasses.
My note simply for this part was, ooh, cool guy in glasses. Yeah.
Which he specifically, in the Deke version, he calls her Meatball Head.
Mm-hmm.
In the Viz version, he calls her Bunhead, which is the name that they use in the manga as well. So you can see where the difference is too. But the major thing to take from this is, in the Deke version, as he makes fun of her, she takes the test and she runs away. The Deke version, she turns around and says, well, he was kind of cute, and then runs away. In this version, we know he's kind of a punk. His pressed purple pants.
Yeah.
Yes, because he's standing outside of the jewelry store and just staring at the jewelry store and calls him a weirdo, which we didn't get that in the Deke version.
Nope.
But we can see him standing outside the jewelry store for a while, and you can see that he can sense something is off. We then get to Usagi walking in front of an arcade. The arcade poster shows a Sailor V video game. She already has her own video game. She's kind of going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they've already done this. She is so cool. I wish I could be as cool as Sailor V, as pretty as she could be, and fight crime and stuff like that. But I bet Sailor V doesn't need to take tests or go to school and stuff like that, and can definitely tell that she's obviously a typical 14-year-old that is struggling in school. But she goes home and she's talking to her mom. Her mom brings up the fact that the nerdy kid called, or she ran into the nerdy kid on her way home from shopping. He mentioned that there was a test and that he got 95%, which obviously Usagi's very upset that he blabbed, because she wasn't going to show her mom this. What the Viz version does that I absolutely love is, as the mom is like, I want to see your test. I want to see your test. It's literally like 10 seconds of Usagi just standing there going, I don't know. And it's just a freeze frame of her, and finally shows it. And it's not until like 5 seconds after seeing the paper that the mom starts to freak out, which comedy gold, in my opinion. So she kicks Usagi out of the house to get better grades, to go study harder.
She doesn't say that though. She just kicks her out. It's like, get out of the house.
She kicks her out.
Get out.
Which is where I had why I didn't like was because in the Deke version she says get your ass to the library. Go to the library and study. Get your studying done. Whereas the mom in that one's just like, no, you're not allowed inside right now. Go away. So,
you're not allowed inside until you do better.
I can't look at you right now. Go somewhere else.
So obviously she's been locked out of her own house. She's panicking, asking her mom to let her back in. This is the only version where Usagi has a little brother as well. Her little brother was completely nixed from the Deke version. But he kicks her in the butt and basically makes fun of her and says, "What'd you do this time?"
Get kicked out of the house again.
Basically, what stupid thing did you do this time? And he does the atypical thing whenever any comical anime character does. He pulls his eyelid down and does the big, huge tongue thing to taunt her, and then slams the door in her face.
Yeah, real quick. Andrew saw that, my son, and he's like, "How does that go?" And then he looked over Lady and went, "Yeah," and he's like, "No, I don't like that." So, I thought that was pretty funny.
Obviously, some time passed, and her mom somewhat forgive her because she was let inside the house, but she's in her room now, and she's exhausted from studying. Probably got into her room, took 2 minutes, laid down, is like, "I'm exhausted, this was enough," and she starts to doze off for a nap because she deserves it and she's had a long day. It pans to her window. Her window is being fiddled with. It opens and it wakes her up. She notices that the black cat from earlier walks in. And she's wondering, oh my god, it's the cat with the bald spot. What are you doing here? Again, with the bald spots.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the black cat actually speaks for the first time. And she tells her, it's not a bald spot. You're being very rude right now. I've been looking for you. You are going to do great things. You are the Sailor Moon Sailor Guardian that is going to rescue this Earth, who is going to find the Princess Queen Serenity, who's going to find the other Sailor Scouts, and we're going to defeat the evil that is invading Earth. Obviously, Usagi, who was asleep just now, does not believe her whatsoever, because obviously it's a talking cat. And so Luna says, all right, well, I can prove that you're not asleep. And her way of convincing her is giving her a brooch. So this little tiny brooch, she summons the brooch, comes on. Usagi's all excited because it's a new piece of jewelry. She starts looking at it in the mirror. She's just all excited and showing it off. She's putting it on the little bow of her uniform. And obviously you can tell that Usagi's still not believing that this whole thing is real. Luna's still trying to convince her that you need to fight the evil that has come to Earth. If you don't believe me, then follow my rules. You're going to say, Sailor Moon power make up.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
Again, we're talking about the Japanese version, which is the same thing in Japanese. It's literally the same thing in Japanese.
In the Deke Dub, they took the makeup word out. I thought if nothing else, I could put transform. Because I'm sure in the I should have watched it subs instead of just dubs, because I'm sure they probably say henshin,
Yes.
which is transform in English, not make up, by the way.
So the reason why they did make up is because the whole magical girl trope is that when they do the whole transformation, they powder their face and put on lipstick and everything. So that's where they came up with
to little girls.
Exactly.
Not in 2017, 2018, they're not.
But this is where we get our very first transformation of many that we will see, just like in Power Rangers. We will see the transformation.
Okay.
It will get cut down later on.
That's metamorphosis, though.
Yes.
So, I was watching this, and what I know about Sailor Moon is very little, but I do know that they like transform and they do their little power pose, whatever it is, right? So she transforms into the same outfit, but with accessories.
So the boots and everything, it's yes, essentially it is styled after the same thing still. But
graphic.
Yeah. Because she's wearing a schoolgirl outfit and then she transforms into wearing a schoolgirl outfit.
A prettier schoolgirl outfit. Come on. It
Prettier.
was nicer. It was.
Yeah, you had to,
you know,
makeup.
It's her class A school versus probably her class C school that she's going to because of her grades.
So that's what makes her unrecognizable to her friend later on.
The thing that you'll recognize too, though, much like Power Rangers and much like other transformation shows, any type of like major monster of the week shows, eventually her transformations will change her appearance. But for right now, it is matching the lesser power that she has deep inside her because she doesn't know who she truly is. She's slowly finding out who she is. She's this young, innocent girl, and that's why it's the closest thing to what she recognizes is her schoolgirl outfit. Except now she can fight because it's easy to move around and stuff like that.
Sure.
But she does her whole pose. She freaks out. She's like, oh my God, what's going on? And all of a sudden, her little bun accessories start to go off. And she hears her friend calling for help because her mother is starting to strangle her. We then pan to the jewelry store where Naru is being strangled by her own mother, which, holy cow.
Yeah, and real quick, in that pan, I thought it was really funny that on a billboard, there's a neon billboard that literally says "moon" across it, and I'm just like, I just started giggling at that. I'm like, you'll
see, it's actually common throughout the whole show.
Oh yeah, I mean the wrap that her lunch was in had moons on it. Her bedding had moons on it. That billboard sign. Those were the three things I noticed just in this episode alone that had moons on it.
Between that and Usagi is also translated to rabbit. So all of her stuff is rabbit themed as well. So her lunchbox, her book bag, and stuff like that too. But we get to Naru being strangled by her mother. She's asking her mom, why are you doing this to me? What's going on? We need to call the ambulance of all these people that have collapsed because all of the customers in the shop have fallen over from exhaustion. And this lady that is strangling her starts to change. And you can see that her skin and everything starts to become leathery and her eyes start to yellow and her hair starts to turn into wired, mangled mess, which as a child of 14 is the most terrifying thing that I could ever think of. Especially if I thought it was my own mother. And she clearly states to her that I have locked your mother in the basement. Once I kill you, I'm going to kill her next. Again, in the Deke version, that never happened.
Nope. Different demographics.
Also, we never find out what happens to Molly's mom in the Deke version either. She just gets defeated and she's never seen ever again as well. So for all we know, Boston Molly is an orphan now and still going to middle school.
But she owns a jewelry store now. It's her inheritance, right? I mean,
She sold all of her stuff for 90% off, though. So
yeah, how much?
all the profit is gone.
Are you actually going to get there?
Yeah.
But just in time, Sailor Moon comes in, and she starts the famous catchphrase of, "Hey, stop right there." The villain turns around and says, "Who are you?" Which will happen in every episode. "Who do you think you are? Who are you? Who are you?" And she says her whole spiel about, I fight for love and justice, and in the name of the Moo, I'll punish you. And yes, it happens every single time.
Word.
Again, this is her very first fight. This is her very first everything. The lady says, "What kind of catchphrase is that? You're a silly little girl," and raises all of the deprived energy people from basically the dead. And all these zombified customers start rushing forward to attack her immediately. Major thing to take down is one of the customers has a broken bottle and tries to stab her. Again, Deke version never happened.
Nope.
We don't even see her get cut or bleed or anything. She just gets pushed down very gently. But she falls down, she's bleeding, she's starting to panic, she doesn't know what to do. Luna's telling her, "You need to fight, because that's what you do." And the witch's arm starts to swing around and stretch to go towards her. And right in the nick of time, a rose cascades down like a bullet. Just like the old cowboy movies of old.
It's missing the sound effect.
Yes, it plays a cool guitar. This is where I don't understand what the theming of. Is he a musketeer? Is he a cowboy? Is he masked vigilante? He's all of those things because he's Tuxedo Mask, obviously. Yes. But he looks down at her and reminds her, "You need to be brave. You need to get up. You need to fight, Sailor Moon." And
it's your destiny.
After she starts to say, "Well, I can't help it," and she starts to cry, which her little bulbs start to flash and causes a sonic scream throughout the whole area, and it knocks out all the zombies and stuns the monster.
So as I've mentioned, not all that familiar, so this is my first watch through. And I'm sitting there with Jessica, my daughter, there with me. And I'm like, okay, I'm confused. I thought like maybe they might have super strength or speed or something like that. But crying is her superpower? And Jess just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, kinda."
In the beginning.
Yeah, and this is what's supposed to beat Goku, by the way.
Not this version.
Bitch, please.
Again, we're talking about, this is a 14-year-old girl that is just first realizing that she's a superhero. But again, this is the only time that we'll ever hear the supersonic scream of her crying, too. The rest of the episodes, we will see her actual attacks, which Luna shows her very first attack, which is the Moon Tiara power. She takes the tiara, flings it like a frisbee boomerang, and completely destroys the monster in one hit. So then the witch turns to dust.
Yes. And we have our first Monster of the Week defeat that I noticed in the Deke version. She actually has a line. She says, "I shall return."
Yes.
Because different marketing, different demographic, they didn't want, like we talked about earlier on the previous podcast, you don't want your villains being dead when you're marketing to, little kids in the United States. So.
And then she turns to ash, and the ash like flickers and just goes
glittery.
away. It's glowing.
Yes.
And then it just disappears in a couple of flashes, like Streets of Rage villain just got knocked down.
I think the Roomba was close by and probably got it up. That was what it's from. It was the light off
the
of that.
Power of the moon. It turns it into moon dust, and it just glitters away.
Wait. You need to do that again so we can make that a clip for our TikTok.
Glitters away.
Again, bitch, please.
We're just starting out again. She gets much stronger later on.
Goku was taking down full-grown man at 14. That's all I gotta say.
Getting back to Sailor Moon, who's much more powerful. We end up with the Jadeite is holding the energy that's being stored. Obviously, because the monster was destroyed, all of the energy is dispersed back to all of the people that were knocked out. Queen Beryl didn't get any of her energy, and we know he says that my monster has failed me, and he disappears into the distance, which anytime that we see any of the Crystal Knights, I noticed in the Japanese version, and this was just something that I noticed rewatching the Viz, they have very trendy jazz music that they play anytime that those guys are playing, which I have to look into a little bit further, but I thought
that how the show ends, though?
Not yet, because we end with her back at school. All of the girl students are talking about how they all had the same dream of the beautiful Sailor Guardian came to rescue them and defeated a monster, and they were all saved. And they're asking Usagi, "Where were you? Where were you?" And she's too tired to deal with this because she had a very long night.
Yeah.
And end scene. Now,
roll credits.
Almost.
The major difference for Deke is at the very end of the roll credits, we always get what the lesson of the day is.
Before the credits, they did it.
Oh, yes, before the credits.
Yeah.
And in this one...
They did a PSA.
In this one, the Deke version, they stated, no matter how hard you try and put your head to it, you can always succeed as long as you keep trying. Because she failed her test.
Yeah. Well, she succeeded somewhere else, at least. I will say I did like that it had a PSA, but that's the 90s kid in me. Having watched all those PSAs in between commercials, breaks, and things like that. So I liked that they had that there. They didn't do that in the Viz version, which I think is kind of a shame. I thought if they had redone something like that, it would have been nice. Just because those are fun. Then they'd have something else, a little extra content they could have put out somewhere else too. So
instead, what we get in this is similar to, you'll recognize this, but at the very end, instead of a Taisho era secret, Sailor Moon starts to talk about a fun fact about one of the Sailor Guardians, and then goes into what the next episode is going to be, which we kind of get a sneak peek at what the next episode is going to be when we see the silhouette of Sailor Mercury in the background going to her special credit school.
So, yeah, I mean that's pretty common for anime, especially around that time frame. They did a lot of the after credit stuff to keep people on, and then you had filling right into the next episode of whatever the next show was. So awesome. So final thought, Cody, how did you like rewatching it? Did you get kind of the same emotions? I mean, I know it's a different version of there, but what'd you think?
I absolutely. I mean, obviously, I'll love both versions. I love this version, and major thing that is interesting too. If you notice, and Aaron, you might have noticed this in the Viz version, all of the colored cells specifically for the Viz version, all of them got sun damaged. So all of them have a pink tint to them, which everyone in the community says, oh, it's the Sailor Moon effect. Whenever you have like that slightly pink tint to it, it's a romantic anime. You know it's going to be an amazing, all done by sun damage.
Okay, I saw it. I just didn't know what it was from, and with it being a more of an uncut style show compared to the other one, I didn't think it was anything like that. But so that's good.
But now it's the whole theming of the show, and we now know where because a lot of what a lot of kids these days with the filters and stuff, they call it the Sailor Moon filter, which is literally just making everything slightly pink tint behind it, and that's where that comes from.
Okay.
So to our listeners, if you couldn't tell, Cody's a walking encyclopedia for Sailor Moon. So
Not at all.
That's why this was his episode. So Sean, overall thoughts of the episode you watched, and do you think you might want to watch more of it?
Well, that's a great question, Aaron. Let me address that right now. There are things about it that I enjoyed. The calling of the shot with the tiara, like the boomerang, felt actually very cool. I really liked that. The transformation, despite my hangups of that they're just adding accessories, I could see the appeal there. That was entertaining to watch. The transform, and I would be interested to see how that progresses. But as far as watching another episode, we'll find out if we do another rewatch.
So that means no on your free time, and yes for the podcast. Okay. Now, Jamal, I know you did this for the podcast. You might. I don't know if you've watched this one,
too, baby. I did this.
You've watched this one before with him.
This is all because I'm married to this man. But in my Randy Jackson voice, it's a no for me, dog.
So before I talk about what I liked and didn't like so much, I actually want to go through. I did watch the Viz version. Like I said, I watched it with both of my kids, Elaine and Andrew. Elaine is 9 years old. Andrew is 6 years old. They both have watched Power Rangers. They've watched a little bit of Dragon Ball. They've got exposure to anime, to live action shows, superheroes, Monster of the Week formulas. So this one and our next episode, Ninja Turtles, I did that with them as well, because I really, I think it'd be good to have a little bit of their input on this. So both of them liked the show. Both of them did. They really liked the transformation. Elaine loved Luna. They both thought the bad guy's evil plan was stupid. Stealing energy off of selling cheap jewelry. She said that. Yep. Elaine was like, I can't believe that was their plan. And she's watched, come on, she's seen lots of Power Rangers and seen lots of dumb plans.
Oh, wait till she gets to later on episodes, the style of some of these monsters.
Andrew really liked the throwing the tiara and it being a one-hit knockout. He thought that was cool. And they both said they'd watch it again. Elaine, I think, is a little bit more interested in watching it again more than Andrew is, but at his age, anything can get picked up and go, and I don't have a problem with that. They both did prefer. I did show them the video of the Deke intro, and they were like, "That is so much better."
As much as I love Moonlight Desu, I wholeheartedly love the Sailor Moon theme from Deke.
Yeah.
That's my preference as well.
I get that. I liked it better myself. So for me, the Viz one had better pacing for the story progression. Deke was very fast. You could really tell the edits on there. I'm a 90s kid. I like optical flips, which they did quite a few times in Deke, but they didn't do any over in the Viz version, which, original animated, they wouldn't have done that. Get that. I did like the music in the Deke more than the Viz, because Viz stayed true to original music, whereas in the 90s, all animes that came over, they redid all the music and sound effects for the American audience to have that higher quality and to have more mass appeal. They both had good voice actors in there. I enjoyed both sets on that. I don't have any issues with it. Some of the voice acting in Deke would have been better with the pacing being a little slower. That would have been my only real thing, but it wasn't on them. It was on the script and how they moved the show forward. So,
which, to be frank, Viz did try to hire some of the original voice actors. Unfortunately, a lot of them had complicated contracts where they could not take on the project. So there was that whole thing as well. This is also a whole different demographic. So a lot of the voice actors from the 90s have grown up since and now have more mature voices. So
yeah, because if they started recording the original show in 94, or technically if it was released in 94, they probably started recording in 93. And the second the Viz started recording in what? 2014. So you're talking, that's a 20-year gap. I mean, my voice doesn't sound the same as it did 20 years ago, so they won't. I mean, we learned anything from X-Men 97. Some of these guys, voice actors, especially like the biggest one, is really easy to tell, is the guy that is Wolverine. His voice is definitely a bit gruffer and harder to stay in that Wolverine voice for a long period of time, which is why it seemed like they cut down on his time. But it was, again, great having original actors. It would have been great to have it with this too, but I completely understand why they didn't. So just so everybody knows, this actually had 2 different episode names as well. In the original series, it was A Moon Star is Born, which is a great setup. That's a great episode title for a setup for your first episode, I think. This one is The Crybaby, Usagi's Beautiful Transformation. And as an adult, that can be taken in so many ways. It was like, I mean, come on, let's workshop that a little bit more, please, before you make that your final edit there. So all right. So that was the show. That was Cody's absolute favorite and most inspirational one from his childhood that he wanted to bring forward to us today. Thank you for that, Cody. There was a lot I didn't know about the show. I appreciate the history on it, watching both, seeing the differences. So before we head out here, I just want to mention Drawn to Comics, our deal and secret code. The deal there is with every $10 purchase, your name is entered into the monthly drawing they have, and that code is R&R Pod. Again, that is R&R Pod. Now, our next episode, which will be coming out hopefully within the next week, is going to be on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1987. Season 1, Episode 1, Turtle Tracks. And this was Sean's choice. And I guess we could maybe guess that by your shirts. I mean, what exactly does your shirt say?
I'm actually in my 40s.
There it is. So join us next time. Jamal, why don't you take us out?
Yep. So join us next time, or see you next time, when we hit a rewind.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.
everyone.